You are now listening to the IELTS podcast. Learn from tutors and ex-examiners who are masters of IELTS preparation. Your host, Ben Worthington.
Hello there, IELTS students. In this episode, we're going to look at how to write an IELTS problem and solution essay. After listening to this, you'll be able to write a problem solution essay. We're going to look at the structure and how we divide it into complementary parts and how we can link those parts. And we're also going to look at how to structure the argument internally so it appears logical rather than spontaneous or episodic. Now, in this tutorial that we're going to do, I jump into it in quite a lot of detail and explain what you need to do. Now, if you need to know how to do it, and if you want to test your knowledge in this, once you've learned this and you want to get feedback to improve, then have a look at the online course at IELTS Podcast. We've been having some great results with that, and I'm quite impressed. So let's push through. Now, a problem solution essay, or problem and solution essay, as its name suggests, proposes a problem to you in the question, and it asks you to suggest a solution or maybe a few solutions to this issue. It might ask you about the causes of the problem or the effects which the problem has. And like an opinion essay, there's no right or wrong answer. We have to remember that this is an English language test. The IELTS organization is testing your competence in writing in English, in communicating in English in the written form. It's not testing your intelligence or your skills as a policy maker. Let's have a look at some example questions. First one. Loneliness is an increasing problem in many societies, especially among the elderly. Why is this? How might it be remedied? You might want to write down these questions, and I would consider as well pausing the audio and then even writing out an essay plan just to see if we're on the right page and just to see how you would attack this if you were in the exam. And this has two benefits. One, you're improving your idea generation machine, which is your brain. Just by constantly pushing it for ideas, you're going to get better at this skill. And secondly, it's going to improve, it's just going to help you with your English in general. Well, you're going to get better at recognizing IELTS Task 2 questions. You're going to get better at transcribing, which is a very useful skill to develop, especially for the listening, and it helps improve in all areas. So I'd really recommend that. Question 2. The world's oceans are filling up with plastic waste. What are the reasons for this, and how can the situation be improved? Third question. Many of the world's rarest plants and animals are on the verge of becoming extinct. Why is this? What, if anything, can be done to slow this process or arrest it altogether? Let me just say that last one again. Many of the world's rarest plants and animals are on the verge of becoming extinct. Why is this? What, if anything, can be done to slow this process or arrest it altogether? What does arrest it mean? Now, this is a good example. Sometimes you might find a word that you're not fully familiar with, and this can be quite a precarious or dangerous situation to be in, because do you assume you know the meaning and write what you assume? Do you just go with your gut and jump in there and guess it? Well, I would recommend you guess it, but you make an intelligent guess, and we'll just look into this now because it's quite relevant. So it's saying we can just use the question to give us the clue. So what, if anything, can be done to slow this process, or alternatively, or arrest it altogether? So it's something altogether. It's like an end. So you could easily guess, I think, that it means to stop it altogether. Even if you're not 100% confident what arrested means, we can make an informed and intelligent guess just by understanding the context of the question, and we've got slow it down or do something altogether. Altogether means sort of like just bring it to an end. So just stop it altogether, once and for all. Intelligent guessing with the words. Let's just go back to how these problem and solution essay questions are structured. Well, each of these questions has something in common. All of them start by stating a problem, asking about the causes, and then ask you to propose a solution. You see? So as the name of the essay question suggests, they fall into two parts. The question is asking you two parts, the problem and the solution. Sometimes it could be a little bit more difficult to decipher, but this is where your reading skills will come into it. So just be aware and try and just reduce it down to two essential things. What is the problem here that they're talking about? What is the solution? Now, structuring your answer. As always, the structure of the question should give you clues and should give you an indication as to how you're going to structure your answer. Problem and solution essays fall naturally into two parts. The first, describing and exploring the problem, and the second, setting out the solution or solutions. For these purposes, it's important to treat the causes or effects of the problems as part of the description of the problem itself. Let's take a concrete example from one of the questions. Loneliness is an increasing problem in many societies, especially among the elderly. Why is this? How might it be remedied? So here's two questions. A question about the cause of the problem and about the possible solutions to it. So this is a clear indication about how the essay should be structured. So as we said before, we are going to structure this. The question will dictate to us the structure of our essay. So we're going to have the introduction. I won't go into it in much detail here. We're going to have body paragraph number 1, which will be describing the problem and its causes. Okay? Number 2 will be about the body paragraph number 2 will be your proposal, your solution. And then we will probably finish with a conclusion. Now, let's jump into the details. How are we going to answer this question in detail? First, let's break it down in how we are going to describe this problem. The first step is to simply state the problem with examples or illustrative descriptions if possible. Okay, what does an illustrative description mean? Well, it's kind of similar to an example, but we're just going to put in some more details there, and we're going to try and obviously squeeze in maybe some topic-specific vocabulary. In this instance, our illustrative description might include, elderly care centres, state-provided care homes, just words that you would only find related to this issue. That's topic-specific vocabulary. So, describing the problem. Well, we can simply restate the problem. This is why paraphrasing is a very useful skill to have. Here's one example of restating the problem. Loneliness is an increasing acute problem in most societies. The problem affects all age groups and social classes, but especially the poor and the elderly. Just rephrasing it. And as you can see, we've kind of followed that general example of going from general down to detailed. In the second sentence, the problem affects all age groups and social classes, but especially the poor and the elderly. You see? We're just bringing it back into our specific topic. Now, with this opening sentence, we've not only restated the problem, but we've given it a qualitatively richer description. We did this by saying it's affected all the social classes, the youngsters, the workers, the middle-aged group, everybody. And then we brought it to the detailed to get it back on track. Okay? We haven't gone off-task response because this is related. It's affecting the whole of society. We're just acknowledging it and we're given the illustrative description. We've also introduced the question of social class, okay? Because we said especially the poor and the elderly, okay? Obviously, we're going to focus more on the elderly. Now, describing the problem. So we're going to try and develop our description of the problem a little more. For example, what is the problem? In this case, it's loneliness. And what's this like for the people who experience it? What are the consequences? So as you can see, if we're following this kind of structure, this process, we're going to have quite a lot of material, quite a lot of content in our essay, and it's still relevant. Next sentence. Not only is loneliness in and of itself an unhappy state, but it also weakens the ties between family and friends which hold society together. Hopefully you heard that useful little structure there. We said not only is loneliness in and of itself an unhappy state, okay, so that's just basically saying not only is loneliness an unhappy state, but it also weakens the ties between families and friends which hold society together. So what I'm basically saying is loneliness is not only a social problem, but potentially a medical one. It can lead to poor physical and mental health. Sorry, that was another example. Let's continue with describing the problem. We're going to try to develop our description a little bit more. So, for example, what is the problem? What's the problem like for those who experience it? What are the consequences? Here, you might want to recall those 6 question words we use in the English language. And these are very useful for not only expanding your answers in part 2 or part 3 of the speaking, but also for expanding your answers in your essays, especially part 2, task 2, when you're stuck for ideas. Let's just quickly review them. Who, how, what, where, when, and why. Now, going back to the question. What's it like for people experiencing loneliness? What are the consequences? So I'll give you 2 sentences now of covering those questions. Not only is loneliness in and of itself an unhappy state, but it also weakens the ties between family and friends which hold society together. Super. Loneliness is not only a social problem, but potentially a medical one. It can lead to poor physical and mental health. Right, let's review the first one. Not only, so we've used the inversion there, not only is loneliness in and of itself. Ooh, now that would be a very useful structure to write down, to practice using, and to get feedback on, So if you want to learn that structure, and I think it would be useful because it's quite unique and it's quite advanced, the best way to do it would be to review the grammar rules, write down a few essays, try and incorporate it, and then get feedback on the essays. And you can get feedback on your essays at IELTSPodcast.com. Just go to IELTS Podcast Essay Correction Service and you can get some very high quality expert feedback there. So we've got our 2 descriptions. We've got what's it like for those experiencing it? Well, it's an unhappy state. And what are the consequences? Well, it weakens the ties between family and friends. Okay? And we've also got another sentence where it's saying that it's a social problem. We've got the inversion of again. We've got not only is it a social problem, but potentially a medical one. It can lead to poor physical and mental health. You see? Quite straightforward. You've just heard a very qualitatively rich description of the problem. Okay, we've included the consequences, we've included what's it like for those who experience it. Now let's move on. We should look at the causes of the problem. And here it's very important to mention we can do monocausal explanations, or I guess it would be polycausal explanations. So monocausal ones are sometimes less persuasive, okay, because we're just giving one cause. So if we really want to build up our paragraphs, we can give a few causes, and it's probably more persuasive as well if we're taking into account of a variety of factors. Here's one example of an attempt to address the question of the causes of loneliness in modern societies. The causes of increased loneliness in modern societies are not completely certain. Amongst them might be included the disappearance of many traditional occupations, the decline of public transport links, and the rise of modern cultural technologies. You've got a whole raft of different reasons there for the causes of loneliness. That's much stronger. So also, hopefully, you would have realized that we admitted uncertainty. This is what we look at in the IELTS course, in the online course actually. We've got a whole chapter dedicated to it, but it's what I've been talking about tons of times before. If we're admitting uncertainty, it's an indicator of strength to be able to concede limitations to one's knowledge. How fancy does that sound? What I'm saying is that by admitting uncertainty, I'm showing that I am intelligent enough to know that there are limitations to my knowledge. I do not know everything. So this is why we should always use this uncertainty element. We avoid generalizations. This technique is called hedging, and it's used a lot in academic writing, and this is why there's a whole chapter dedicated to hedging in the online course. So moving on, let's suggest solutions. We're going to propose solutions now. Now remember, we're not limited to any single solution. It's fine to suggest quite a few solutions, but remember, we do not want to get ourselves bogged down in recommending intelligent solutions and new ideas that just keep popping into our mind. This is why it's important to make a solid essay plan beforehand, and then if you're giving your solutions, just choose maybe 2 solutions, okay, or even just one, and develop it stronger. You've got different options there. Okay, so if you really want to make it go a bit further, you can even give solutions that seem to conflict with each other, because at the end of the day, okay, you are simply being asked to canvas, to produce one or more possible solutions. That's it. I personally would recommend 1 or 2 solutions, and I would avoid that they conflict with each other, because if you are writing as a non-native speaker of the language, it's going to be a challenge to communicate effectively your ideas, and then putting conflictive ideas in there as well is going to make it even more challenging to read. So I would go for simplicity and go for ideas that kind of work well with each other. Now then, suggesting solutions. So how are we going to structure this in our particular case of the problem of loneliness? Well, we might start off with a general statement. Because there are a number of causes at work in the problem of loneliness, it is unlikely that any single solution will, by itself, be sufficient. So once again, we've got this hedging there. Hopefully you identified it. We said it is unlikely that any single solution will by itself be sufficient. The sentence does 2 things. It connects the first part of your essay to the second part, and it prepares the reader for the fact that you will offer a number of solutions to the problem. And this is good. This helps us with cohesion and coherence. You've just heard me say I'm going to suggest a couple of solutions. Now I'm going to give you those solutions so there's no surprises, there's no nasty turns. It's just smooth and coherent from beginning to end. Here's an example of some of the solutions. One immediate practical solution is to improve public transport links. This would enable family members and friends in different cities to visit each other more easily. Straightforward and simple. Hopefully you've heard that kind of mini structure. One immediate practical solution. Those are 4 words that you could copy paste and you can use in any problem solution essay. One immediate practical solution is to, can you see? It's quite straightforward. And if you want more of those structures, there's quite a lot of them in the online course we have. Next sentence. But as we have seen, the causes of the problem are more deeply rooted. We may need to consider structural solutions. For example, can we change the way in which work is organized in our society so that people more often work together and face to face? So here's a direct question. Normally I wouldn't go with a direct question, but if you can pull it off, fine. What we've just done there, what you just heard, was we structured a very qualitative argument, and it wasn't merely episodic between our different points. There was a connection there. It was the structure of our argument was logically motivated. Let me just go back. We've talked about the problems with public transport. We said we could improve the transport, but then you kind of negated that and you said, actually, that's not a bad solution, but really the problem goes much deeper, and the problem goes much deeper. Perhaps we should change the way our society is structured in a work environment. And then this way, as I just said, we've got a logically motivated argument. So just to summarize, we began with an immediately achievable practical solution, and then we went on to discuss a more ambitious and a more general one. So in this tutorial, we looked at how to write a problem and solution essay, the points you should include. We looked at how to clearly structure the essay into 2 complementary parts and how we can link those 2 separate parts. And we also looked at how to structure the argument internally so that it appears logical rather than merely episodic. So that means that it appears more logically structured rather than random, and it's got this logically motivated structure behind it as well. Okay, my name is Ben Worthington. Thank you very much for listening. And if you want more material, and if you want more help, then go to IELTSPodcast.com and join our email list, and you can get lots of useful material, lots of updates, and lots of promotions there as well. Okay, good luck with your IELTS preparation. You will get there eventually, trust me. You just need to put in the work and keep writing those essays, keep doing those reading tests, keep doing those listening tests, keep practicing your speaking, and trust me, you will get there. All the best and take care.
Thanks for listening to IELTSPodcast.com.